That's exactly right. Awesome. So, Brynn, thank you so much for
Thanks for having me.
the time today. I've been excited for this interview only because being in the Chicago ecosystem for a long time, I've watched from afar as Jelllyvision has grown. And when we moved into the space we're in now, that was actually one of the validators that this would be a good space because right next to our door was the Jelllyvision logo. So like, we got to be in the right place. But I want to thank Amanda for connecting us.
Yeah.
I've turned into my new nickname, I guess, is Neighbor Ted.
She does call you Neighbor Ted. That's true.
She does every time she sees me, too.
Apologies to you, Neighbor Ted, because she's loud, so I'm sure you hear her all the time. Shout out, Amanda. Love you anyway.
Well, she might have given me the nickname, but she's been nothing more than an awesome neighbor in our space. And I think within 5 seconds of meeting her, I was inside, sitting on the couch, eating cupcakes with the entire team.
I actually do remember that day. That happened when you walked in and all of a sudden you had a cupcake. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Very appropriate.
So from that point on, I felt, I have to understand more what's going on here.
Yeah.
So Brynn, thank you so much for
absolutely
taking the time. And I thought, maybe kind of an interesting place to start is, Jelllyvision. Let's talk a little bit about the business.
Yeah.
So how it came to be, problems you solve, the audiences to speak to, and maybe we start from there.
Yeah, sure. So Jelllyvision's been around for a long time, actually, which I think is interesting when I tell people that because we're really in Chicago tech and the Chicago community, and a lot of that is startups or sort of the startup mentality. But Jelllyvision was actually founded in 1989.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so our founder, Harry Gottlieb, hi, Harry, if you're listening, started as Learn Television. And he has been a lifelong educator and really believed in teaching kids. And so our foundation was as an educational company in feature-length films, actually. So that was how it started back many, many years ago. But the evolution is actually really interesting and grounded in the entire philosophy that people can be educated on the topic or can learn about something if they're entertained. And if they feel like there's something in it for them and there's sort of engagement there. So when we started, it was kids and educating them on various topics. But then it moved into video games because we said adults can also be entertained and educated if they're not bored, right? So we made a lot of games throughout the 90s, which was particularly relevant in the CD-ROM era, which at the time, of course, was how anyone got any sort of game or any media. And if anybody would like a old school Jelllyvision CD-ROM game, let me know, because I have a whole box of them still. But that was really how we got out to the world at the time. And then the interesting thing is, as we journeyed through like the dot-com burst and really the evolution that led us to the internet to what it is today, it was difficult because the rich media that we could put on CD-ROMs the internet wasn't ready for it yet. Right. And so we had developed both a philosophy and a technology around interactivity. So using behavioral science, humor, just empathy, and really trying to basically humanize an experience, we were able to create what we called interactive conversations. And you see it in some of our video games from even back in the 90s, where it's sort of this sort of question and response, choose your own adventure you can go through and experience. And that was foundational then, and it still is what we use today. But it was difficult to make that transition to the internet, which obviously now is hilarious to think about that because the internet has such rich media on it. But at the time, that was difficult. So we turned to companies because we realized, you know what? We can entertain people through video games and videos, but also there's a huge need out there to educate like prospective customers or employees on various things. So we evolved from more of a video game company to a agency of sorts that did projects for tons of different companies, educating people that might come to their website and want to understand more about their products, or maybe wants to help their employees understand more about some training they had to do. And that was really how we made it through the evolution of physical discs for what people are, consuming media on to broadband internet. And as we evolved into this world, we're working with tons of companies. And this was really about, it was 17, 18 years ago, because that was when I started at Jelllyvision.
Okay.
We realized there are certain industries that are really relevant for just confusion and really complicated topics that need our help. And that's where our flagship product, Alex, was born, because it is a experience that helps employees understand their benefits, their medical benefits, their retirement benefits, Medicare, life insurance, all of these things that are just really, really complicated and very, very important. And so today we are a company that focuses entirely on that challenge, on the challenge of employees needing help understanding, choosing, and then using the benefits that they have from their employer. And that's where we are today. But if you look at the through line, besides the fact that we have always led with sort of behavioral science, empathy, and humor, it's that our mantra for years and years has been be helpful, right? How can we be helpful to some audience in some way? And what we've really found is that, helping people make better decisions and feel better about what they're doing is the way that we can be helpful.
That's awesome. And I want to poke a couple questions on the narrative because some of that I knew. So I knew, and I'm allowed to say the name of any of the games. So,
yeah. We have a history, and we have a great sister company, Jackbox Games, as well, that exists today.
Absolutely. Yep. So you don't know Jack is the one that I think is almost a household name in that story there. What's interesting to me is, a lot of my audience is either entrepreneurs or startups or, running businesses. And a common thing that you hear with organizations, usually from a place of motivation, if someone's stuck, is you look at all these companies that have it together, right? Jelllyvision, from my perception, is a company that has it together.
That is flattering. Thank you.
Oh, they're doing well. They've got a great product. Everyone's heard of them, right? They're well known in the marketplace. And then when you peel it back, you find out that didn't necessarily start off and say, I want to build a product that does this. And so what it sounds like is, challenge number one was internet came along. And I was trying to build websites around that time and you couldn't do a lot of cool stuff. And so that delivery mechanism changed. And then it sounds like there was even a shift into more of a services type of an organization for a little bit, which if I interpreted that correctly, the proposition there wasn't necessarily a tool. It was a way of approaching problems, and those problems were storytelling and educating. But it continues on from that gaining framework. I'm curious, in terms of identifying, you're right, one of the most confusing topics out there that continues to get confusing. Some might say by design. But is healthcare and benefits something that your team identified and then went to market, or was that something that was kind of coming from the type of work that was coming your way and you realized, we could make a whole business out of this?
I think it's a little bit of both. Right? A company, in order to be successful, especially if you're kind of in the startup mentality where you're trying to figure out product market fit, right? We didn't even realize at the time that we were going to become a product company because we truly thought we were an agency that would just go project to project and solve problems in a couple month stints and then move on to the next, right? And so that's how it started, right? Is saying there's this need, there's this really complicated thing out there that we can help with. But that was when we realized that there's a scale component to it that made it something that's worth considering as a product instead of just sort of this one-off project that you do, right? Because at first you're thinking, oh, okay, we can help this one company with this one problem. But then as you're researching, you go, oh, this problem is out there for a lot of different people, a lot of different companies. And even just, as human beings, you've picked benefits, I've picked benefits. It's a nightmare. We know that from like our own actual personal experiences. So that was when we said, how can we make this something that we can repeat? And looking at things like plan design documents and what people get from their insurance carriers, you realize that there are lots of different flavors, there are different premium amounts and structures to plan designs, but largely it is a thing you can build around so that you can create both the ability to customize an experience for a company, but also have it be something that is configurable to you and in your own tooling to do. So we didn't start out saying we want to find a product that's going to make us successful. We said we want to solve problems and be helpful, and then realized in that journey with this particular problem that it's something that we could solve at a much more scalable level if we opened it up to other companies.
Makes a lot of sense. And in that transition from the organization, I'm trying to play timelines together. So 17 years with the organization.
Yeah.
It's at the time of this recording, we're 2025. The ACA came out in about 2009, 2010.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And then I did do research that Alex was launched right before that, maybe
Yep.
a year or two before that.
Yep.
So this question may predate some of your experience or not, but for organizations shifting from services to product, was there a time that the organization had kind of a foot in both sides of the fence? And what did that transition look like? Only because I know of a lot of organizations considering that.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a time when we were both trying to figure out how to get our product off the ground, but then also still doing a ton of agency work for customers that we either already had or ones that we kind of had already had in our pipeline. And that actually went on for a couple of years that way. And some of that is intentional because even today we do some custom work for customers that buy Alex, but then need some other things. And so some of it was like, yes, we want to keep a good, strong sort of custom team arm to our company so that we can make sure that we can still do those things. But it really was something we had to sit down as a leadership team and say, where do we want to focus? And for a while there, we couldn't answer that question because Alex didn't have legs yet, and we weren't sure if it really was something we're like, okay, we can survive on just this and abandon the rest of our business. So we had to go through that for a couple of years. But I mean, now when you look out there, there's a lot of competition. There's a lot of different options. But when we were first really building Alex, like, there wasn't a ton of direct competition for it. And so we're competing against essentially doing nothing, right? We're competing against the PDFs that you get from your insurance carrier. And so it was a challenge to, at first, sort of convince companies like, you need this. This would be beneficial to you. And that was, until we could get that traction, we really did operate two different companies under one roof, which is hard. It really is hard because you need people on one side that know how to scale and think about processes and protecting uptime and customer contracts and all these things. And then on the other end, you need like creatives that are pitching design ideas and developers that are writing unique code for customer experiences. So we managed them separately for quite some time before we decided to just go all in on the Alex experience.
That's so interesting. And I mean, that is also something you see with organizations and folks that are trailblazing in their industry. My day job, we work with a lot of organizations how to position them better. And one of the things that I always try to take a look at before starting the project is how many decisions are you working a client through, right? So there's somewhere everyone knows they have the problem. There's a lot of solutions. I have to make it stand out that you're the best solution. And then there's where you started, which is, it's a problem. Did you know there was a solution for this? And trust us and buy this, and let's move forward. It's so fascinating. So let's talk about Alex for a second. Probably a pun on before Alex has legs. Alex still does not have physical legs.
No,
I was watching robots on LinkedIn the other day, and I was like, whoa, it's wild. But we take a look at where we are now in terms of people interacting with interfaces. ChatGPT being the obvious one. A lot of question, answer. People are having these conversations. If we go back to when Alex was launched, the only other thing I can think of that was similar to that was the paperclip that Microsoft had. Clippy, was that it? Yeah, that was his name. Yeah, I think I was still a PC person at that time, coming out of the corporate world. What was kind of the thought process behind labeling the product this way and delivering a type of interface? And maybe talk a little bit about how it works.
Yeah, so the goal originally when we created Alex was to create an experience that quite intentionally is not a real person, but behaves like you're having a conversation with a real person. So if you put a face to Alex, then it doesn't allow, it's kind of like when you're reading a book and you paint the picture in your brain of what that book looks like. And then you watch the movie and you're like, oh no, they cast that character totally wrong. I don't agree with it.
Correct.
So we intentionally have Alex be somebody that isn't a specific person, but feels like a person to you. And so that was the original impetus for it. Like, you're having a conversation with Alex and he's helping you understand what a high deductible plan is. And for a while there, that was the only sort of modality for Alex. But as technology has changed, as a great example, and even just the speed in which people communicate and find information on the internet, right? You don't necessarily want to sit through a 10-minute explanation of something. There are still people that really do, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that don't. So now we have different modalities inside Alex where you can go through, for example, an experience that has no audio. So you can just
Interesting.
click buttons and answer questions and go through it. We have an AI chatbot, right? We have Ask Alex, where you can type in your questions and it will respond to you. And the key thing for all of those different versions is it's the same tone, it's the same helpful and casual behavior that you would expect if you're texting back and forth with your HR person, right? That's what we
Right.
want that to feel like. But it allows you to choose, like, maybe you do really want to sit down for 10 minutes and have somebody explain to you why the PPO is your best option. That might make somebody feel better. Maybe what you need is just an email where it's like, hey, don't forget, you need to do these things because you told me you have these conditions. So here's some reminders, and you
Yeah.
prefer stuff that way. So I think it's a really interesting challenge for a lot of companies right now to think through how to best get to your audience. And unfortunately, there isn't a good direct answer for that if your audience is a pretty broad swath of people, right? If you're really trying to get at multi-generational and multi-workforce types, you kind of have to have a bunch of different options.
That makes a lot of sense. So, in terms of, I can't imagine developing a tool like that, and again, I think it's rewarding to hear that it has been out there since pre 2010, for a long time, and still evolving with all the changes. Um, is there, with people prompting and asking questions and things like that, has there ever been any kind of challenges that you kind of learned along the way? We're dealing with like HIPAA and things like that, and I'm not asking for any big exposures, but I would just imagine anytime we release a tool, particularly something people can interact with, sometimes there's shenanigans or something that wasn't thought of.
Yeah, absolutely. So we take security and compliance really seriously at Jelllyvision. So I'm sort of chuckling when you ask that question because it is very, very real. But one of the things that's cool about Ask Alex, and like Jelllyvision uses this for our own employees, is that it's only as smart as the information that gets fed in about the plan designs that are available to employees and how their benefit plans work, at least for the questions that they're going to ask that are specific to what's my deductible, or whatever those questions are. So we really gate it so that it's something where, like, it's going to give you helpful answers because it is based on the information that's being pulled into the tool that are based on the facts and the data of what is actually available to you.
Gotcha.
Which I know, we all do it. You go out into, pick whatever AI bot you want to talk to, and you kind of type in something and it gives you an answer, and you kind of have to go, is that right or not right? And sometimes you got to go through the sources to figure it out. But the benefit there is, like, it is pulling your premium amount. It's pulling your claims information through the system. It's pulling the information about you specifically based on what's available to that particular thing. And so that's important to us. But the other thing I would say is, like, we have customers that also, like, they have a very sensitive employee population, or they themselves don't want that kind of technology integration, which is why we always have an option too, where, like, it's okay, you don't have to use that.
Mhm.
You can have it be more agnostic, and something that maybe doesn't have quite that much interactivity and sort of rich data pulling, like that exists too. It's not the most robust user experience that way, but it still works, and it still is something that is a lot easier for folks to want to use if they are not really comfortable with that technology.
So interesting. And so, speaking of comfort with technology, I want to touch a little bit on buying cycle and audience. So, without even seeing the tool, I can imagine that employees, and I know you work with large organizations, because that's where we can see the value, because we're reducing the amount of calls to HR. We're helping any, there's it's a scaled system. I can see the benefit to users. I'm curious, when you are approaching a new customer, is that conversation starting with HR? Is it starting with users? Does it play into what benefits should we even offer? Just curious what that looks like.
So the interesting thing with our business is you're right that it's a good fit for large employers, and we do have direct relationships with large employers that use Alex to help roll out, and then also just get people coming back to the experience as they have qualifying life events, as they have things throughout their benefit plan year that they need. But the other interesting part of our business is smaller businesses that we work with.
Oh, interesting.
And a lot of that comes through brokers, right? So
Yep.
a lot of insurance brokers that we have relationships with, when they're working with their smaller businesses, they might either suggest or promote that business uses Alex, especially if they're going through some sort of plan change, design change. Maybe they're getting benefits for the first time, or they're changing carriers, or something like that, where they know there's going to be a lot of friction. It's a great time to introduce a tool like ours. So we really think through both the buyer as the HR professional, which is definitely a thing that we work with, but then also we have a huge component of our buyers that are the brokers themselves that we work with, and then they go to their entire book of business and say, hey, we could use this tool, and kind of develop relationships that way. And then we have partnerships. Like there's things that we do, like leave of absence is a huge, very painful part of the human resources experience. And we have partnerships, and we do a lot of support with leave of absence management, because that is a thing that plagues HR departments too, because there's laws and regulations and different types of leave that you can take with different amounts and all these sorts of things. So we really focus on where can we be most helpful to the employee population, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're selling directly to HR or to a CFO or whoever's making that decision. It can be through the recommendation of their broker. We have had a few customers, and I love these customers, where they come to us and they say, hey, we want to learn about your tool because we just hired a new employee, and that employee said they had Alex at their last company.
Oh, cool.
So that does happen. We're like, hey, I used that before. I want it again. And I always love those sort of like kind of boomerangy stories. But in general, we sell to the employer or their broker, not the employee themselves.
Gotcha. That's so interesting. And I hadn't realized the small business aspect, and that makes perfect sense, because I would fit my business in that category.
Absolutely, yeah.
And we just went through open enrollment.
Yep.
We've got a wonderful broker, I've got a wonderful HR person, and every year they go through a process, and we always seem to luck out. Everyone's rates went up, yours only went up a little bit, right? Seems to, or whatever that might be. Hope I'm not revealing too much about the health population of our organization, but it can be confusing, and that has changed too, right? In terms of the different types of plans. This last time I learned of the grandmother clause, and that's an actual definition. I thought it was just an updated terminology. What does that mean? Well, I don't know, but we're in it. It's safe. But learning about that, and even some of the self-funded plans and things like that that are starting to roll out. So the speaking of it being a confusing space, it's always been somewhat confusing for an employee, but also on that employer side as well. So it's interesting to hear that the tool is being utilized in those spots.
From the employer perspective, one of the most important things that we can provide is helping that employer make sure their employees are best using their benefits. So we do have companies that come to us and say, look, we're dealing with huge cost increases with our premiums. This is not a sustainable trajectory that we're on. Just look at the news, and that is everywhere, right? And one of the things we can help with is, like, if your employees understand what is available to them better, then you as an employer stand to save some money, because they're going to enroll in the right thing and they're going to use it properly, right? And so you spend all this money on the suite of total rewards that you give your employees, and then they either enroll in the thing they shouldn't have and it costs you too much money, or they don't even know what's available to them, and you're spending all this money on these voluntary benefits and programs and services to try to get people using things and saving you money, and they don't use it, right? So our platform allows you to say, hey, did you know, you just said you're going to have an extended hospital stay. Like, we have critical illness and accident insurance. You should look into that. Like, those types of things really help. If we know the specificity of the user and what they're up against, because they tell us, we can then say, these are the things that are available to you. You should specifically look into because of your situation, which is a lot easier to do in a targeted way than it is just, in the plan designs and whatever you're putting on your company benefits page.
That makes perfect sense. Speaking of the company benefits page, the onboarding for something like this. So, and I've worked with a lot of internal tools, right, and helped implement those tools or even built those. And look at this, isn't this great, right? And the fun one that I always talk about is when we're redesigning portals, right? And these old, archaic, hard to find anything. And the CEO wants a CEO corner to be more transparent and all these. And then you go talk to the people and they say, you know what, I hated the old one, but I knew where to get the lunch menu and I go to that every day, right? So our trick as part of our sales pitch is you want to take what you want people to see and put what they're looking for right next to it, right?
Absolutely.
So I'm curious in terms of onboarding to such an amazing tool like this and building trust. What are some of the things or trends that you see in that?
Yeah. First of all, shout out to our customer operations team, if anyone is ever listening to this podcast from there, because we have a wonderful implementation team that works with our customers to help onboard their tooling for them. And so then it's live, right? And then it's up to the employer to figure out how do we get people to come to it, right? And so we offer a lot of stuff that comes along with Alex, where we can help with text messages and emails and designing homepages and that kind of stuff to try to help drive people to what you need to see. But at the end of the day, it's definitely something that has to be an investment and a prioritization of whatever the internal infrastructure the company has for that experience, right? And I think the benefit to something like Alex is that it's sticky from the perspective that once you go to it and you realize it can be really helpful, you will try to seek it out and you will try to find it on your portal just next to the lunch menu. But I think that is that's an evolution all companies are on right now, which is there's so much noise for employees.
Right.
How do you get them to focus on what you need them to focus on at the time that makes sense? So one of the things that we have is benefit communications, and we can help structure how do you send things out over the course of the year to make sure people are using what they need to be doing and paying attention to the right things at the right time. Because we have the benefit of thousands of companies that have used our tool, and we can certainly gain some best practices along the way about what has worked and what hasn't worked. And we have, employers that have really great utilization and those that have really poor utilization. And so we can go to them and say, what are you doing that's working so well, and offer those best practices to others.
That's awesome. And probably having the background in services, that implementation and adoption is a huge thing.
Yep.
Also, I want to call myself out on something very funny. I need a new slogan on the lunch menu, because probably not a lot of portals have lunch menus anymore.
Probably not. So I laughed when you said that, because I have children, school-age children, and I every week go to the district website to find the lunch menu. And I was like, that is actually a thing I do every Monday morning, Ted. I print out the lunch menu and I look at what it's going to be for the week.
I'd like to think I'm still relevant in my observations of usability design. But speaking, if I'm calling myself dated, it's interesting to think of how ahead of the curve your platform and Alex is, because what we're all seeing now with remote and hybrid working is that employee experience, right? Yeah. Used to be, what kind of office am I walking into? What do I wear to work today? What's happening on the coffee, right? Yeah. And so those interactions that when we can deliver those digitally that are engaging, it's really interesting. I could almost rewrite history and say that every step that was taken in the evolution of Alex, starting with games, right, could have been designed to put your team where you are today. Yeah. But it's really interesting how it came to be in that process.
Yeah, it's almost like hindsight, obviously, but of course this is a problem we'd be good at solving, right? If you went back, what would be a problem we could solve? It's actually kind of remarkable to take this long to get there. But I also think the health insurance and education space has evolved so much in the last couple of years. And like you were talking about the ACA, and there's all sorts of new plan designs that are coming out now to try to keep costs down. Like ICRA's is a great example of that, right? And there was a time a few years ago where high deductible plans were on the market for the first time, right? There's always this evolution of that industry, which means there's always work to do to help people understand if what is coming out and what is the new shiny, if that's a good fit for them or not. Because sometimes those things are rolled out because they really can benefit employees, and sometimes not. And so it's kind of important to keep that lens on it.
Yeah, sometimes that are some of the checkbox things to say that we did training and people are kind of cruising through them. Although someone forwarded me the training that they were getting at the office, and it was Christopher Walken conducting it. I'm like, somebody figured something out. Like,
yeah, that's pretty cool.
What you got to do is not open the email. You don't know the sender.
Now that would be entertaining.
As an excuse to do a mini Walken impression. So fascinating. So I want to talk a little bit about your role in the organization. What is kind of a day to day? What are some things that you're spending an obscene amount of an extraordinary amount of time on? All that sort of stuff. It sounds like a fun place to work from what I've observed being a neighbor.
You know what? It is a fun place to work because we try to take our work very seriously, and we try to take ourselves not seriously. And so that really helps. I always say, like, we're only on this spinning rock so long, so like we might as well have some fun while we're here, because like work can either be a chore or work can be a joy, and that's the choice of the people that you work around. And so really keeping that in mind is really important to all of us. And once you're in a culture like that, it just breathes on itself, and then it is something that's a little bit more entertaining. But so I run business operations at Jelllyvision, and in my tenure, like I said, I've been there since 2008 actually. Every role I've had has been in managing the people and the things, right? So I started as a project manager, and then as Alex got off the ground, I evolved into running more of our scalable like production and customer implementations. And then somewhere along the way, I switched into more business operations. So I like to say that my job is to make sure everybody at Jelllyvision can do their job. So that includes, like, for example, our help desk is part of my responsibility. Our HR team, our people team is my responsibility. Our PMO that runs the trains across the company is my responsibility. And then I work very, very closely with the whole leadership team on our goals, on our metrics, on how we behave as a leadership team so that we can run the company in the way that needs to be run. So it really is like a bag of potpourri of what I work on, because then I also am responsible for, our business insurance and working with our legal team and just kind of a bunch of different stuff. But the thing that's important to me about that, and why I think it's interesting to think through what a typical day looks like, which I don't have a good answer for, is especially if you're a small business, I think it's important to have people that can just jump in and figure stuff out. And if I was writing a book about my career trajectory and everything, I would say, I don't know, all I did was jump in and volunteer to figure stuff out. And if you are out there and you're a founder or you're trying to get something off the ground, like, find yourself a person that's like, yeah, I don't know, but I'll figure it out.
Yep.
And it will eventually evolve them into a job like mine that I absolutely cannot explain to my family at the Thanksgiving dinner table. And one that Amanda, our CEO, might say, can you handle this? And I can never say no, because I'm like, I guess I can figure that out. And there's very, very good things about that. But there's such tremendous value in having folks in your organization that can, and frankly, not even just can, but thrive on being the underbelly.
Yeah.
And just making sure that they can shove people out on stage to do the thing. I was a theater kid, but I think now that I look back at it as an adult, I'm realizing I was a producer. I loved producing plays. I did not like acting. And so now when I think about it, I'm like, yeah, because it's the person that's behind the scenes,
moving
literally
the parts,
doing the things and making sure it's happening, but not the one that's on the stage.
Oh, it's fascinating. It's funny, you said two things here that I can relate to. So one, having a job that you can't explain at the dinner table. When I was in grade school and they ask you what you want to be when you grow up, allegedly that was my answer, was I want a job that my kids don't know how to tell their friends what their dad does. And I kind of have it.
Mission accomplished. Yeah, that's pretty great.
I kind of have it. And the other one, or I want to get paid to shake hands. I don't know where it's coming from. What I was exposed to. Yeah. I was a politician. That's probably where that came from.
Yeah, it's probably it.
Was also a theater person as well. But I liked the acting side.
There you go.
Yeah, so that's amazing. So from an operational perspective, I mean, that's kind of everything that's moving. And what it sounds like, there are obviously things that are within your, Brynn, you take care of all these things.
Direct responsibilities, yeah.
But then there's another piece in there too, which we used to call the garbage person, right? Which is the wrong way to say it, but
it's true. It's accurate. Yeah.
But if something pops up, who can we throw on? And there's always a fire going on in a business. But fire is the wrong term. There's always something we weren't expecting to have happen. It seems like a lot of your role gets pushed in there. Yeah. How do you balance that with the 10 emails you were going to send at the beginning of the morning? The podcast that popped onto you. Thanks. I feel like I'm destroying your company right now by having you here.
No, it's great. I actually was really looking forward to recording a podcast with something different. I think it depends on the day. It's a hard question to answer, because there are some things that are fires that maybe aren't good or bad, but like they got to be done today. And then there are other things that, can maybe wait to do later. And there's also a hugely cyclical nature to my role, right? So right now we're planning for 2026 because, as you already mentioned, like it's late 2025 as we're recording this. So we're planning for next year, and that's what we do this time of year. Our business very heavily sales skew for the fall because it's folks that need our tool in advance of their open enrollments. Most companies have open enrollments that are in the fall. So my job kind of, for the most part, sort of ebbs and flows with our business. So I can predict that a little bit. But the other thing I would say is you have to have people that you can lean on and work with and have a structure around you so that if you have to drop something for this particular fire, somebody can pick up the other things, either because they want to or because they have to. And it's a type of position that offers like a lot of love it or hate it growth opportunities for the people around it. Because okay, if you need me to go all of a sudden do this project that kind of came out of nowhere, what's going to happen to these 4 things I was already working on? And you know what? Sometimes you just have long, hard days.
Yeah.
I think anybody, especially anybody that's working in any sort of startup capacity out there, can relate to that. Where like sometimes the answer is like, there's no such thing as reprioritizing. It's just your day just got longer, or your week just got longer, or whatever it is.
No, that's fascinating. And I just learned something that I think is interesting because I deal with the same, right? In co-running the company, that your day starts with this and then it ends up in that.
Yeah.
But one of the things that you said is a lesson that I think I could take away from, which is, if I heard it correctly, always having somebody else exposed to the thing that you're working on. So if you have to pick up and leave, somebody else also kind of knows about it.
Yeah.
And I think that is super important, especially with someone who's balancing a lot of plates, which is there's it might not be the same caliber as Brynn, but there is a Brynn or a role like that in a lot of organizations. And I think that can be one of the challenges too, not just from replaceability, but to scale yourself in that role, right? Absolutely. If you're putting out all the fires, how can you move into the bigger work that might need your attention, even though you're the expert at filling out the forms for the X, Y, and Z?
Yep. It's very, very real. And I would say I have a couple responses to that. One is a lot of people think it's a luxury to have backup, but it's succession planning. And it's what do you do if someone we always say gets hit by a rainbow, not get hit by a bus. Because people they're on their own trajectories. They have their own needs. They have things that either are urgent or not urgent that come up. And so it's not just a luxury for you to have somebody that you can hand stuff off to, but it's also sort of a business risk mitigator, which is important, right? Because if you can't do something, somebody else can. And the other thing I would say is it doesn't have to be somebody that has a direct line to exactly your career path of doing the things, right? You might have your backup for something might be somebody that like on paper you'd be like, why do they know how to do that? It's like, because it's an interesting stretch project for them. And it allows us to have more people understanding more of the things, right? So I really encourage leaders to look at that and go, it doesn't have to be a clear fit of who is your sort of second in command for various things. And then the third thing I would say is be honest with your teams about this need, because I have wonderful people I work with that don't wait for me to tell them. They say, Brynn, I'm taking this from you. Like, no, I'm taking this. And I'm like, you're right, because I am not a good delegator. I am a person. And I think a lot of people that are in any sort of founder or startup mentality can relate to this, where you just think you have to solve it all yourself. Yeah. So if you surround yourself with people that are like, no, I'm taking this from you, and you have a strong enough relationship with them where like that is perceived positively because they are trying to help you and also learn and grow themselves, then it becomes something that actually is mutually beneficial to everybody.
Yeah, and as someone who is constantly and has been with the organization for so long and is constantly and skilled at solving those problems, there's two things that I find can impact delegation. The one that I think most people assume is, well, I'm the best to do this and no one's going to do it right. And I think that's less of an inhibitor of delegation and less true in most people's mindsets than it is a responsibility of, I don't want to dump this pile of crap on somebody else.
Yes.
I need to finish this. I need to get this done. That's, know. And then the third thing is, it would take me just as long to explain to someone else as it would to do the other. Yep. So those, I've experienced all three of those.
Yeah. I have too. I totally agree. Yeah.
And it goes back to the lesson that I will say again that I just learned from you. There's a couple of things you said today. I'm like, wow, that's how I feel and think, and you just codified it and said it a great way. I have to go back and play back some of it. But back to having someone else involved with the things that you're doing, because what it also does is it supports kind of a transition we're seeing in the workplace now from management to leadership.
Yeah.
That has always been there. But as we're looking at how do we grow and scale teams, right? There's all sorts of things. There's middle management things out there. There's how do you get junior talent who's not sitting in the office experiencing things all these times, and how do we scale with AI doing the busy work? That's where people used to learn their jobs and blah blah blah. I can keep going.
Yep.
One of the throughputs to solving that I've seen with companies that are still evolving is getting people from other groups involved and exposed to what else is happening in the company.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of a hurdle with imposter syndrome, I've seen. I'd be curious if you've experienced any of that in the spot. And it always comes from the smartest, most capable people too. Have you ever noticed that?
Oh, absolutely.
Like anyone's like,
where you go, you shouldn't feel this way at all, is the person that feels that way.
Yeah, like for us, we'll have like a picture of something like, I don't do business development. I don't know how to talk that way. Just be you. Like it's talk.
None of us know what we're doing.
I'm telling you. Yeah, exactly. That's fascinating life lesson. So talking about some of the people in the organization, how does that break down? So you've got designers, engineers. What are you looking for when you're hiring?
Yeah.
You describe kind of the culture.
Yeah.
Sounds like a fun, cool, happy place. Well, maybe it doesn't. I've experienced the fun, cool, happy place. I haven't done much talking about it yet in this conversation.
So because we have a technology product, HR technology. So we have what you would see very typically with a product organization, product strategy, product management. We have an entire wonderful development delivery team. All of our developers that actually work on the under code. We have a whole creative team, which is really important to us because it's from where we started, right? And making sure that we have the right both literal and figurative voice to the product, design elements. And then that bleeds into our own marketing and our sales enablement and all of the things that kind of help support us both get our customers and then grow those relationships once we have them. So I think very typical structure overall. One of the things that we really look for, and it's an interesting balance for us, particularly if you're in our sales revenue organization, is you're selling to HR professionals and insurance brokers. The industry itself is quite complicated, and there's certain expectations and a lot of relationships that are built there, right? But then we are a company that tries not to take ourselves too seriously. So it's the mixture of wanting to be very empathetic and very human in how you do your work, but then understanding and respecting the industry in which we play in, and how sometimes how we show up doesn't match how they show up every day, and sort of knowing how to make that trade-off is really important. And so we really look for that. And the other thing that we look for is people that just do what needs to be done. Kind of going back to what I was talking about my role, but it's actually one of our company values is we're small. We're not a huge company. We really do believe that good ideas come from anywhere. And so we need people that are curious and are hardworking and want to show up and maybe this is your title and this is your job. And we vetted that you're great at that, but you might have a great idea for the product team, or somebody just had a killer idea for a remote event that we're going to do coming up, where I'm thank you for that idea. A person that absolutely is not responsible for employee engagement, but had a good idea. So we really try to find people that are interested in kind of crossing those boundaries a little bit and offering their perspective. I will say the last thing that's kind of helpful for us and beautiful for us is we're all users of Alex, because we're all employees that have unique medical and health situations and families. So we get to have a say in how we think it should go, because we actually are our own customer, which makes it interesting to us because we don't have to learn about the customer mindset or the user mindset because we are the users.
I think that's so important too. I mean, in any, whether it's service or product, experiencing on a day-to-day basis. And I think it's so interesting to consider what the experience is for a new hire.
Yeah.
And going through that process and going through open enrollment. And I have a lot of clients that their software is something they use themselves and then put out to market. And it's interesting seeing how the development patterns can shift based on those different influences.
Yeah, for sure. It's still very important to understand who your user is no matter what, but it's easier to do it if you yourself as a human being consider yourself a user of your product.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Very cool. So what I want to kind of take a look at, just kind of look at the time, things like that. So trends.
Mm-hmm.
What are some things going on in this space? This is 2025. We already touched on remote work and AI and all that type of stuff, and shifts in consistent ongoing shifts in policies in healthcare.
Yeah.
What are some of the big things that Jellyvision is looking at, and kind of where your role fits in there, and what's keeping you up at night?
Yeah.
Maybe that's easy to say.
I mean, it depends on the.
Everything depends on the day. Yeah.
No, I would say I would sort of divide the trends that I think about in my role into two different buckets. Because one is how our business is supported and what do we need to do from a customer perspective, and then the second is I very much am responsible for our employees and how they feel and what they need. So I would say from the business perspective, I think we've touched on a lot of it. It's figuring out how to become truly AI native instead of just saying that you use AI, because everyone says that, and what does that mean? So how do we make sure that we have embedded that into our technology and our code, and allow our product roadmaps to accommodate those things, which we have done this year. But then also it's it's scary out there as an employer with offering benefits and what is going to happen with the rates that you pay. And there's a lot of challenges right now with the government subsidies and grants and things that really are making it very, very hard for employers to do anything that lets them be even remotely profitable if they have employees. And so thinking through how we can be a partner to our customers and making sure that we offer something that's valuable enough for their precious dollars to help them with the problems that they're solving is always a thing that is important to me. And and no shortage of news in the news about how that feels. And I think when I was thinking through this question, what keeps me up at night, I think it's exactly the balance of the two different parts of my role that keeps me up, which is how do we operate as a good business that keeps our own costs in mind and keeps our customers in mind and all those things, with the very human element of what it's like to be one of our employees. And if you want to be a good, strong employer that attracts great, strong employees, what are they actually interested in? And I got to be honest, I think the last couple of years that's been a really big challenge, because as we've gone from everybody's inside at an office all day, every day, to everyone's remote all day, every day, to something in between, I think we've lost the element of people feeling connection to their coworkers. And I'm not saying that the solution to that is having people come back in full time, because I don't think that's the solution for a variety of reasons, but that's a whole nother podcast. But I do think it's important that, like, I don't know, what kind of shoes your coworker wears.
Yeah.
And like you actually, when they're having a bad day, you can tell because you see them and you're like, ooh, you're having a bad day. And there's like just an empathy and sort of like camaraderie that exists that I think is hard for employees to feel right now. And so I worry about that as an employer, because I want to make sure that people, like, people always say, like, you stay for your manager, you stay for your team.
Right.
People don't quit jobs for that reason, but you have to really feel that, and you have to really feel connected to your coworkers and making sure that, like, they've got your back, you've got their back, kind of a thing. And I think it's a really challenging time to have that ecosystem make sense.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, and like us, along with every other company, has gone through this. I think we've introduced a lot of things. We've virtualized things like water cooler chats. We've done a lot of company virtual get-togethers and that sort of thing. But also just kind of the dispersion of the workforce too has been interesting on that. You mentioned knowing what kind of shoes they wear. I totally agree. In fact, it's probably more politically friendly than my joke, which is how tall everyone is. That's the first thing like, I had no idea how tall you were. It shouldn't matter, but it is an interesting.
No, but it is. You go, wow, I had no idea.
Yeah. I'm just looking for an opportunity to do more face-to-face talking where I'm not also staring at my own face.
Yes.
Because I'm an emotive person, and that's just exhausting.
It's exhausting.
To me.
It is. And there's tons of studies that have come out now about how much more mentally exhausted we are at the end of a day on Zoom all day, because you've been staring at your own face for 8 hours, and that actually rewires your brain. So there's lots of things about that make it less than optimal. But the alternative is to return to a structure that, frankly, doesn't give people the flexibility that I think, especially during the COVID years, people proved they deserve, because you can do your job elsewhere. For the I mean, it depends on the industry that you work in and what you're doing, but then it also plays into, like, what does that do to the local economy, right? Like, what happened to downtown Chicago when no one was here? It's not great. So, like, thinking through how we can make all of those things true at the same time is pretty complicated.
Although I do think, and I think it was just published the other day, I think we're number 4 on the most migrated from outside cities to Chicago in terms of people who've moved. New York's number one, and then it was Houston. I got the other one.
And then Chicago was
And then
fourth.
Chicago, yeah.
Good old Midwest.
Yeah, exactly. Midwest values.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, I think in closing, this is fascinating to learn more about the organization, your role, and also just kind of I didn't ask the specific, what is the culture like? But I always think that's a weird question anyway.
Yeah,
because
it's hard to answer that, right?
It's hard to answer it.
It's like,
but
it is what it is.
I got such a flavor for I think I probably could define your culture better than any other guest I've had, just by hearing how the way that you talk about the company and the growth of it, and a lot of synergies. I just said synergies on podcast with other creative organizations. I think it's cool. The one that comes to mind is it Warner Brothers Enlighten, Educate, and Entertain? I think were their three things.
That's a great parallel.
But it makes so much sense that you've had, the business had the success that it has. Well, the rest of the world has a boring product that they're trying to make engaging and interactive.
Yeah.
You've got an engagement interactive company that attacked a traditionally boring product industry, which is totally awesome and has that human factor in it. So I think maybe as like a closing, so for organizations that aren't yet using Alex, this doesn't have to be a sales pitch, but what are some of the things that maybe smaller businesses or mid-sized businesses should be considering and thinking about when it comes to employee benefits?
What should they be thinking about with employee benefits? I think it's really important to know your population. And I don't mean that like understand their claims data. Like, it's not anything like that. I just mean that oftentimes it's easier to just say, okay, what's the recommendation from my broker? Okay, we'll do that. But like sitting down and having conversations with your employees about what they value and what they need. And that doesn't necessarily have to be how you structure a PPO plan. It can be, mental health benefits. It can be how your PTO policy is structured. It can be where you throw your learning and development investment dollars. It can be, honest to God, in the type of granola bars you put in your office, right? There's just such a gamut of like what matters to people and what they need. And I think what we've learned is employees really just want to feel heard, right?
Yeah.
They want to know that somebody just asked the question and then tried, which is a pretty low bar. Like, you're not expecting a lot, but thank you for asking me my opinion on that. And we rolled out some benefits this year because we did a benefit survey for the first time for our employees. And we said, hey, what do you think of what we offer you? And what suggestions do you have for changes? And we got some great ideas. So I would say, don't be allergic to asking the questions, because it doesn't mean you have to do everything people tell you, but it allows you to know what matters. And what matters isn't always as traditional as you might think. And sometimes you can get huge wins by having random things that you do that really mean something to people that aren't that expensive.
I think that's a fascinating response. And if you ever need an endorsement for an organization that is thinking about the humans in the benefits space, how about the one that mentions what kind of granola bars do they like? Part of the response to that question, right?
Listen, a shout out to Jules. Jules manages everything about our office space, and they have a really strong granola bar selection game, and I am delighted every time when I come in and I'm like, these snacks are amazing.
Yeah.
It matters.
And a cupcake game for what it's worth.
Yeah, we did have cupcakes that day too. So, it depends. People won't come into the office for free food. We've tried that. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
But man, if they're there and you're like, yeah, that's the granola I love, or like, thank you for having Diet Coke or whatever it is, like that, it does matter.
Well, because what you're actually saying is not we have Diet Coke today, it's we heard you.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, Brynn, thanks so much for this conversation.
It's
fantastic. Really appreciate the time. And it's back to firefighting time, I guess.
Yeah, it sure is. Thanks so much.